Hey there folks, Mr. Finley here. This video is going to outline the design process, the various documents that different design teams use in creating a design for the theater. All of these documents are going to be documents that you're going to be creating in the next little while, so something to watch. The design process always begins with a production meeting. As we discussed in class in the other video, the director's job is to make sure that everyone has the same idea. So this show looks consistent. So the process begins with a production meeting. The designers and the director get together, talk about the overall look for the show, maybe the metaphor for the show, the visual metaphor. We talked about that in the other video. And then the designers go off to make their designs. That usually starts by pulling inspiration and images that already exist from either books or from the web. This gives designers a sort of starting place to start considering what the look of the show is going to be. If a show is set in a given period in time, as many shows are, these existing images can give the designers a sense of what the architecture or the fashions of that period looked like. What you see here are some existing images that the designers pulled on production of Cabaret I did last year, which is set in Germany in the 1930s. So the designers started by pulling a lot of existing images from the web of what fashion looked like in Germany in the 1930s. Once they've got their inspiration from those sample images and a sense of what the style of a given time looked like, the designers come up with a number of different documents which they will then give to the crew to help them realize those designs. The first of those documents are their technical drawings. You see there are a couple of sketches, which are usually the first of the drawings, so of overall ideas of what a costume or a set is going to look like. But then there are some specific technical drawings as well. For the set designer, in addition to sketches, there are going to be two very important technical drawings. One of them are called ground plans, and these are a top-down view of the stage, showing where the walls go and where platforms go for levels and where various furniture goes. You see an example of that right there on the right. Notice the walls go up and come down for every show. We call walls in theater flats, like those blue-gray flats that we have in the drama room now that we used for the fall show. Flats can come up and down and lets us build walls on stage without actually having to build real walls. Speaking of walls, the other sort of technical documents that are going to be very important to the set designer are called elevations. These are drawings, like you see in the bottom right hand there, that are from sort of stage height, and they're straight-on views, and they show the relative height of different items. That's something you can't really get very well from a ground plan staring down at the set, but an elevation gives you a sense of how tall the different elements are. So together, the elevation and the ground plans function sort of like blueprints and can be given to a design crew to actually then start building the set. For the costumer, in addition to the sketches of how the costumes look, and you see some sketches there for some rather interesting designs, there's a specific technical document that the costumer creates, and those are the patterns. Patterns are drawings of how each piece of fabric needs to be cut in order to be put together in order to make those costumes. They're usually done at full size, so they'll draw the pattern and then they can cut that pattern out and use it to sketch onto the fabric, cut out the fabric, and then piece them together to make sure that they've got all the pieces that go together into the costume properly cut and sewed. The technical drawing for the lighting designer is the lighting plot, and this is, if you can see there, it's pretty complicated, and that is, the picture here is one of the simpler sorts of lighting plots that exist. Basically, a lighting plot shows where every single lighting instrument is hung on the grid. The grid is the series of pipes and bars above most stages that allow you to hang lights. Because every single different show is going to need different sorts of lights. Is it a dark show? Is it a bright show? Are there lots of intense colors? Is it more naturalistic light? Is it supposed to be outside or inside? All of these things mean that each show has a different requirement for lighting, and therefore for every show, the lights are hung in different places. And there are usually many, many lights, dozens, and on some big shows, hundreds of lights that are hung to make sure that you have the correct coverage in the right places with the right colors and all of those things. It's a fairly complicated document, as you can see. Each of those symbols represents a different sort of light, which produces a different effect. And changing between shows, striking the lights and hanging the lights is one of the more time-consuming parts of the process. It's a pretty complicated design document. In addition to those sort of drawings, designers also use other documents to convey their intentions to the crew. The costumer will have a thing called a costume plot. This is because most characters change their costumes over the course of a full-length show, and that has to be kept track of. So a costume plot lists what every single character is wearing in every single scene of the play. Sometimes, as you see in that plot there, characters doesn't show up, so they're X'd out. Sometimes they're wearing the same thing as the last scene, so it just says the same. But this allows you to keep track of exactly what each person is wearing all the way throughout the show. For both the lighting and the sound designer, there are cue lists. These list any time a lighting change happens or a sound effect happens, along with what the cue is called on. That is, the actual line that the character says or physical action that the character does that then triggers that cue. And again, many shows will have dozens of lighting or sound cues, and some big shows may have hundreds of them. Big, complicated Broadway shows and touring shows will literally have hundreds of sound cues and light cues which need to be figured out and created on these cue lists beforehand. Now again, the designer's job generally is not to actually make these things happen. They design them, they envision them, they create these documents, and then they hand them off to the crew. It's the same thing that an architect does. An architect rarely gets out there with the hammer and the drill to build the house. Instead, he hands the blueprints off to a contractor. Same thing with a designer. Once the designer has had the vision of a given show and created these documents that we just went through, they're handed off to the costume crew or the set crew, and then those crews actually build the materials for the show. And that is the design process, whether it's a big show or a small show, whether it's a school show or a professional show. That basic process of production meeting to inspiration images to technical documents to the crew building the materials is pretty much followed for every single show out there. Thanks so much.